Hey friends, Prof here once again. Welcome to another edition of the Louisville Pro-Activist Report. Got a great guest with me today. I'm here with Samantha Franklin.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about disability rights. Samantha works on that and has for a long time, and she's got a lot of information to share. Truth be told, this isn't a subject I know a whole lot about, so I'm going to be learning with you all today. So let's just get into it. Thanks for joining me here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so let's just start with you here and just talk about how you got into disability rights and why it's important to you.
So I want to say, gosh, probably about 10, 11 years ago, my sister had a little boy who was autistic, muscle deficiency, and some other things that were going on. I seen with trying to help my sister that there was very limited resources out there. So with that, I started digging deeper into books, started Googling, researching, and kind of led myself on what was right, what was wrong, the laws. And then we kind of fast forward to 2017. My mother was killed by a drunk driver. And as a child, my mom would always say, "Oh, Samantha, you've got a voice and you want it to be heard and you don't stop." So it kind of, I don't know, it was like a weird feeling that I had in my body that I knew I needed to continue to lift voices for those who cannot speak. And that's kind of where my journey has kicked off in the last almost 5 years, as I just kept reminding myself of what my mother said and flipped that into a positive, that my mom knew my calling before I knew my calling, and that was to be an advocate. So I started working in the field before my mother passed and just got very, I don't want to say overwhelmed, but knew that I was in the right field for myself, because I immediately hit off with great connections with people. I started sitting at that round table that everybody talks about that I wouldn't be sitting at, and so I just kind of kicked off with my journey and continued my career. But I didn't really stop with my career once I was in the building of a 9-to-5. I continued it after I got off work. I drove my husband crazy and friends crazy because I would probably Google everything, and of course would fact check to see if that was true or if I was in the right. And I got myself in trouble a few times because I didn't care if it was my boss that I was saying, "No, you're absolutely wrong. That's not right." And I would kind of just keep doing it basically until recent. I'm working still in the field, but I feel it's home for me because my coworkers, sorry, my nose is running. My coworkers actually, I could feel their energy, the same energy that I have when it comes to this topic, and they push me to be a better me, and then they push me to kind of reach out and find more options for the individuals that we serve. And it means a lot to me that my current job actually trusts me enough to get out and to do that. So that's a long spiel. I probably just overwhelmed you all, but that is my journey from 10 years ago to 5 years ago and to where I am now.
It's amazing how family always knows best. You say your mom kind of knew before you did, and so yeah, it's just kind of always cool to see something like that. So let's get into the topic a little bit. So with disability rights, it's something that doesn't get a lot of press. People don't talk about it a whole lot. So what are some of the challenges that the disability community faces on a day-to-day? And I know there's different types of different disabilities, so different challenges for different people, but what are kind of some of the things people have to deal with?
I mean, first, just saying us, an atypical human being, is what the disability people deal with on a day-to-day basis. The way that I see it is we feel that those that are disabled, or they're not capable of doing what we do, they're not allowed to sit at that round table with us, or we're still institutionalizing these individuals by not having things accessible to them. There's things that I was talking about prior to this. Is one of the biggest things that I've noticed and seen in the past couple of years is we don't even have picnic tables at parks for individuals to sit at that are wheelchair bound, because If we all look at a picnic table, you've got benches. You don't have an extended table to branch off of that for someone to come up in a wheelchair to sit at. Another thing, I was watching, like I told you all, I try to find as much as I can, another Facebook, YouTube channel, and the daughter is autistic. She's not wheelchair bound, but there's a swing set in Florida, and I thought, wow, we don't even have that here in Louisville, and it is a metal platform where someone who is wheelchair bound, they can roll up into that swing set and be able to swing as a child. And I feel we take a lot of that for granted because we just assume, well, they're in a wheelchair, they want to enjoy swinging, or, well, they're in a wheelchair, they can just put their food on their lap. So that has been something that I've been thinking about probably the last year of what I could possibly come up with. Not the swing set, I'm not very engineering, but I'm sure I could reach out and try to find some way of getting this done. But just simply making some picnic tables to make someone feel that they are involved. And so if anybody wants to follow that journey, watch him, because I'll probably reach out and say, hey, I think I'm finally going to do something crazy. Another thing that I see others deal with, and I touched a small topic on this during the rally, if you all watched that, those who have Dynaboxes, a lot of people are not aware of what those are. They're a pretty cool little gadget, and it's like an iPad, and a little metal dot goes on your forehead, and it is controlled by movement. So there's apps that are on that tablet, and they say straighter. So on the tablet, there's little apps that say I want, I need, hi, my name is, and then there's other icons that they can go through to get what they're trying to say to you. One of the biggest things that we've seen in the last 2 years of COVID especially is our individuals being left at places they shouldn't be left at for hours at a time, or they're not even being picked up. So if you think right now I can physically speak, and the young man I just sent home with a Dynabox that will help him speak has now died because he was set on on the transportation for hours when he shouldn't have been. Now he has no way to communicate. Then you're upset because he can't tell you what he may need, when it's not his fault that we're forcing him to sit in this vehicle for a long time. Another thing that I try to explain to people, especially with transportation, is I have the luxury of going outside and getting in my vehicle and leaving. Those who rely on public transportation don't have that luxury. So when you're telling them, sorry, you've got to wait another hour, we'll dispatch someone else out to you, how do you think that makes that individual feel? Pretty less than. I've been in the field for quite some time. The terms you will hear is participant. They are my clients. They are a team member. And that is one thing that I absolutely hate very, very much. I correct my husband sometimes when he slips up with it. To me, I am serving this individual, and when they come to me and they say, hey, Miss Sam, you're my best friend, or Miss Sam, you're my friend, I love you, because you build these relationships. And at that point, it's a respect thing for me to say, hey, friend, or hey, so-and-so, instead of referring to people as a participant and or a client. I feel it's very rude and disrespectful. Some jobs will tell you, well, that's your career, that's how you're supposed to approach individuals. But at the same time, why not build a relationship? Why not try to understand what this person is going through or what they have went through? Why not try to be a friend and stand up for this person? So I don't like it. I don't like the R word. If you ever use that word around me, we won't be friends no more. I hate it with a passion. Mental retardation, thank gosh, is no longer used in medical terminology with diagnosis. So that is a very huge step that we have made in this field. But there's still a lot of things that we should have made steps towards that we haven't. And that's the institutionalization. Some jobs that I've worked at, people say, oh, it's not institutionalized, but it is, because you're looking at gray walls all day long. People are not getting up out of their wheelchair. They're not walking around. They're not doing physical therapy. In this community, it's very much still institutionalized. I don't want to get sidetracked.
I know you mentioned some people being. Let's go ahead and talk about the TARC 3 situation, because you mentioned that some people are being dropped off in places they're not supposed to be. Now, how does that happen? Are there not laws against that? I mean, how are they legally allowed to just drop somebody off anywhere? Because they know that these people are in their care at that point in time for while they're being transported. So, can you get into that a little bit more?
I mean, if you ask me, in a form that is a form of neglect and abuse, because you sign a contract, you also sign and do training for this job. So you know when someone's getting into your vehicle at that moment and that time, you are held responsible for them. That is just like if I drop my kid off at school and they lose my child. As far as laws, I would have to get back to you on that because I'm not sure, but I do know it's a law of neglect and abuse. And we've had individuals that either A, have been picked up and then dropped off at the wrong place, or we've had an individual walk up to a vehicle and say, "Are you my ride? Are you my ride?" And then the driver respond, "Yes, I'm your ride." And they get into that vehicle, and we hours later find out that they took the wrong individual and dropped them off at the wrong house of the other individual they were supposed to originally pick up. So it's been a battle. TARC 3 has been a headache for way too long, if you ask me. They don't care about individuals. If they did, they would do a lot more training. They wouldn't drop people off on wheelchair ramps. That's happened. I've heard a story today, actually, and it broke my heart to know that a driver put someone in a wheelchair up on the ramp and they just lifted it, not paying a bit of attention, and the lady rolled off and it scalped her because she fell off of the ramp. And that was a co-worker who shared that with me, and that happened, I think she said 7 to 10 years ago. So, I mean, in general, it's neglect, it's abuse. There should be charges pressed. There should be police involved when it comes to stuff like that. And we, of course, as a caregiver, have to do incident reports, and that can be a whole jumbled mess in one when you're dealing with other companies and trying to do it their way and then trying to do it our way and trying to give the individual a voice at the same time, because kind of backslide a little bit on that with the voice situation is we assume that someone is happy or we assume someone is angry and not really knowing how they're truly feeling, because not every person or every caregiver wants to take the time to get to know that individual, to learn their body language, to learn the frowns that they make, to even look and see, well, okay, this person, is yelling because they're overstimulated. There's too much going on around them. And instead we're, here, let me push you into a corner without trying to figure out, well, that yell that they just did was actually because they were hot. It wasn't because they were overstimulated. And that's something that is a huge battle in this community, I feel, that I've seen, is that people automatically assume how these individuals feel without truly knowing or taking the time to watch what the individual is actually doing, which I guess is one of the reasons why I want to become a behavior analyst tech, because I'm just very, learning the way the body and the brain and all that functions together amazes me in a sense. And with transportation, they just assume, well, they're nonverbal, so I'm just going to do whatever I want to do, and that's the end of it. Or, they can talk, but they have a past. This is a huge thing that I run into. Well, they have a past of storytelling. So therefore, at that point, something that the individual done 3 years ago all of a sudden becomes their everyday life. So they told one story, and that one story now means that they're going to fib the rest of their life. And that's not true. Why did that person tell a story to begin with? It's just like you're trying to cross out elimination. Okay, were they telling this story because they were being abused at home? Were they telling this story because they didn't like the food they ate? it's where that learned behavior comes in, and it's where you really have to know that person to say, wow, okay, something else is really going on. There's a reason why this happened. It's not just because the person lied or wanted to, and there is a behavior that's lying that people will try and argue all day long, and that drives me insane. So with the TARC situation, from what I'm hearing from a lot of people is, oh, well, they lied. That didn't happen. But we're seeing on the news, or we're seeing out in the community, people still sitting. People still wondering, where's my ride? Why hasn't anyone came? A lot of the individuals I serve, intellectual and developmental disabilities, they don't have a cell phone, so they can't call. What happens then? They're sitting until someone comes, oh, well, what are you doing here? Well, I had a ride at 5 o'clock. Here it is 8 o'clock at night. We're trying to be safe, guys, and cross the street.
And for those just tuning in, I'm here with Samantha Franklin today, and we're talking disability rights. We're currently talking about the issues with TARC 3. We had a rally, about a week and a half ago? About a week ago. Samantha spoke there. So check out that video. That's on my page if you want some more information. Now, one of the things I heard several speakers there mention was the privatization of TARC 3 to a company of MV Transportation. And this company seems to have had a lot of problems, not just here but other places. They've actually lost their contract in a few cities. Was TARC 3 better before MV Transportation? Are these problems new and due to them, or what's the story with that?
As a caregiver, which I said this at the rally, I try to watch what I say because I don't want to overstep those that I do serve and how they feel. But as a caregiver, they have always been this way.
Even before MV?
Even before MV came into play. But it was more, do I want to say they've gotten better in a sense? But then they've gotten worse in other aspects of it. And by that, yes, it's still taking hours to pick up individuals, because I'll use my job as an example. So at 2 o'clock, let's say someone's ride is to be picked up at 2. So therefore at 1:45 and 2:15, we can expect somebody. We have to give them a 15-minute window. Cars, traffic, understandable. But now where they're lacking, the fact is the drivers just don't care. And they will tell you, get out of the bus. Get out. Used to, that didn't happen. From what I've seen as a caregiver for those that I supported. Now, though, it's like a pretty common occurrence that someone is being put out on a bus, or the wrong person is even being picked up. They're not asking names. They're not making sure that they're even picking up the right person. And sometimes when they realize that they didn't pick up the right person, that's when we're running into the issue, we'll get out of the van or get out of the car. Or we don't have enough drivers, so you're going to have to wait until we can find someone else to come get you.
Now, just a quick COVID question here. So I'm guessing with TARC 3, they're probably keeping just one rider on the bus now with COVID, or how's that work? And without COVID, were they having multiple riders? Or?
Yes, they're supposed to have one rider. We are now seeing that it's 2 to 3 with COVID. The mask mandates have kind of lifted. If you ask me, some of the individuals have been vaccinated, some of the individuals have not. I feel the mask should still be mandated within the vehicle, because just from what we've seen across the world right now, and with those that we do serve, the immune compromised. We've got one more. Before COVID, whoever got in there and they rode. And that's where I said, some ways they've gotten better, some ways they've gotten worse. I'm slightly grateful that they've put down more people in the vehicle. And I say that because you could have somebody be picked up at noon and live maybe 10 minutes away from the doctor's office. Well, then, if they were picked up at noon and you were driving and there was several more people that got picked up, but they lived in Hardin County or they lived in Indiana or wherever that was 30 to 40 minutes out, instead of using best judgment and common sense of dropping off that individual as you go, they would then be riding around the city and would get home way later than what they should have. And then we've got parents, guardians, FHPs, which FHP is a family home provider. You've got residential DSPs, which is direct support professional. They're calling, trying to figure out, okay, well, hey, where's my client or where's my friend? Because they were supposed to be here over 3 hours ago and then they're not. And now it's well, we'll get to you in a couple hours and maybe you'll get home within 30 minutes. So that's where it's kind of like, can we not find a common ground and common sense with dropping and picking people up? Because you would think with COVID and having so many restrictions, they would kind of be a bit more on their A game, but they're not.
So yeah, what do you think the solution is to the TARP 3 situation? Is it just new ownership, a new person in charge, or is it bigger than that?
I think they need to have more people that are disabled on their board, for one, that have used TARP 3, because the way I see it, any nonprofit or any huge company that's operating right now should have someone in that building that they are representing for. I feel, yeah, that's fine. TARP 3 wants to use the excuse, I guess it's not an excuse because everybody enjoys unemployment right now, but that they need more employees. But even then, if you hire in 100 more employees, are you going to train them correctly? We've seen that in the last, 2 years of Louisville, Kentucky. We are pretty well known to not send people through the correct training.
True.
So, what is the point in hiring in more people when the people you've already got working for you can't even do the job right? Do you not have the funds? We know that's not true. To do the training? What is the issue? Where it starts at the root, at the highest level. Where is it falling apart once it leaves there? So I think they need better training before they even try to hire somebody else, because they're lacking in so many ways when it comes to respect, common sense, if you ask me, and just the way that they care about people. It's sad. It truly is.
And so transportation is obviously a big problem for the disabled community. Possibly the biggest problem, but it's not the only problem. So let's get into some of the other obstacles that are faced. Let's switch gears to education. So I know, they don't have access to the same education as everyone else. What do you think the state is of education for the disabled? Do you think the teachers are getting the proper training that they need? Do you think that the education system is as inclusive as it needs to be?
I don't think our educators are getting enough training, because you have your ECE special education teachers who are trained and qualified for that job, but then you have a typical principal or regular teacher walking the halls, and you've got a child that's having a behavior at that moment, and their immediate reaction, which I'm sure everybody has seen the stuff on the news, where horror stories that have happened where a child's been drugged out of a classroom, where they've been restrained incorrectly. I strongly, before I went strictly to a direct support professional, I was going to go into JCPS education, and decided against it because it was around the time frame when I lost my mom, and I didn't think I was ready to be around other kids saying, they miss their mom and so forth. But I don't think JCPS, and a lot of parents, if you're watching this now, there's a thing that's called an IEP, or a 504 plan. So my child actually has a 504 plan. And with an IEP, it just means that this child may need 30 more extra minutes to take a test, or this child may need something to fidget with, or...
What's IEP stand for?
You know what? I don't remember right at this moment. With that, it's kind of... The IEPs can be used for anything almost. Rather if it's extra time on a test, they need to walk around, they need to go out into a sensory room, or they just need that extra one-on-one support. And with the 504 plan, my child has one due to sensory overload and a peanut and tree nut allergy. So a 504 plan can be used for medically, allergies, or a disability. And they say the 504 plan is supposed to protect the child more and ensure that their needs are being met. I can say, shout out to my child's elementary school. They have been phenomenal with this, but other families that I am friends with or that I've worked with respite care have either left Jefferson County to pull their kid. Bullitt County, from what I've heard, is amazing with supporting IEP plans. Jefferson County is not. I've heard parents that have pulled their kids out of school to do homeschool because their child's needs weren't being met. And again, it goes back to that's a form of neglect because you're not ensuring that that child's needs medically or educationally is being met. So why do we even have that option as a parent to have that program put into play?
That's a lot. And yeah, let's talk about another obstacle that they face. Although this one's not quite, they don't have to deal with it as often, but it is a big problem. When it comes to voting, for most of us, pretty simple. You know, we just go in, get in line, go cast our vote, and move on with it. But it's not always that simple when you're disabled. So talk about some of those challenges.
Well, for one, you've got, once you turn 17, 18 years old, your parent or guardian has to go forth a judge to say, yes, you are competent, no, you are not competent, and I'm going to continue guardianship, or you're going to go under state guardianship with an FHP or a residential home provider. Voting, to me, I really, it's a hard topic because you're having someone else make another choice for you already in your life. For the last 18 years, you've already had that choice been made for you. I feel it's not fair a lot because how can my dad or my mom say, well, sorry, no, you can't vote, or sorry, you better vote for X, Y, and Z, because I've heard that's happened. Actually, this past election that went, I had a friend tell me that happened to them, and they actually use a Dynabox. So it's clearly that's illegal. I know when I went to vote last year, they told me, hey, you can't stand too close to your husband, back up, go sit down. So where is it fair with those that we serve? They're having someone look over them. They're having someone make that tally mark for them if they're too toned to do that. And by toned, I mean when you see individuals that are kind of scrunched up, it's because either lack of physical therapy, lack of care, or lack of, in general, just caring to make sure that someone doesn't develop all that muscle that's toned up in their body. So I don't think it's fair. I don't think they have a fair shot at voting. I don't agree with the system that's in play with that. I think that's really all that I can touch with voting.
I do think there could be some good news on that front, though, with the mail-in voting. And, you know, before this, I hadn't really thought about it, but yeah, it seems like that would really help out the disabled community more than anybody. Of course, there's also, you know.
But then you're still in that fight of, did their guardian sign them up to be able to vote? So would they have that option being mailed? I think, yeah, that would make more sense to allow a mail-in vote, because then they could possibly do the scribble by themselves and no one would ever know. Hi, Beth. Is that Beth? Oh, no, Rena. Sorry.
Hi, Rena. Hi, Melanie.
One of my friends.
So, yeah, we're down here by Justice Square and the courthouse and everything, talking disability rights with Samantha Franklin today. If you have any comments, just drop them below and we'll get to them. So when researching this topic, I came across some really, really strange and just things that were crazy to me. And let's get into some of those, because I just couldn't believe it when I heard it. One of which is that through the Fair Labor Standards Act, it's a national law, it's actually legal to pay disabled workers a sub-minimum wage, meaning lower than the minimum wage. And I know that some states have addressed that to where that's not a thing, but it's still that way in a lot of states. So what's your take on that?
I hate it because my current, right now, job position is considered supportive employment. And the very first time I seen this sign on a wall, I looked at a coworker and I said, "What is this?" And she explained it. And I'm like, really? Somebody can make $1.13 an hour? Well, yeah, it's based off their performance. Okay, well, I know personally, a lot of people that I've worked with at other jobs, maybe they shouldn't be making $15, $17 an hour. I'm just throwing those numbers out there. But they're still paid that. So with that, the way that they calculate this, which is mind-boggling to me, and it has been something that has been at the forefront of my brain for the past 6 months. Why is it? Because this is how they come up with the number. You all tell me if you agree or disagree with it. You would take myself and all of you all on this live, and you would go and do that job. So let's say you got to make boxes that day. You're going to make 100 boxes. So in that time frame, let's say you've got 10 minutes to make 100 boxes and you make 250 boxes. Well, then someone else goes in and they make 400 boxes. And then it just keeps going. So they take that number and they divide it and multiply it by those individuals. Then afterwards, we then use that scale to say how someone is going to be paid. So if you've got someone that is on spectrum or cerebral palsy and they can only put out 5 boxes in 10 minutes, that means that their pay is going to drop. I don't know about you all, but my pay can't be reduced legally. Why is that okay to do that to others? Why do we think that's okay? Oh, well, we don't want to pay them that much money because then they're going to lose their waiver or they're going to lose their check. Okay, I understand that 100% because some of these waivers have been a true lifeline for a lot of the individuals, like the Michelle P. waiver, for instance. It's very beneficial to the person, but guess what? They don't see that money. Not unless they have a good enough FHP provider, residential and so forth, who cares enough to say, you've got $500 left over from paying your stay, paying your grocery list, paying your transportation. You want to go shopping? No, instead, these individuals are out getting jobs, but they're only making $1.15 an hour. I'm just throwing that out there, that number, but $1.15 an hour is what someone that is in the disabled community could be making right now. The highest that I've seen on that piece of paper, I believe, was $10.25. So someone that has been working for a company for 20 years could well be making $3 an hour based off their performance, because the way that it is seen is, well, if they're having a behavior right now, we shouldn't pay them. Or, well, if they got sidetracked for 5 seconds, their pay all of a sudden needs to be docked because of that. So that is something that makes me very angry, for one, and it is something that I was very unaware that it was even happening. And it's something that I brought up to our lovely governor. So I'm hoping one day, Andy, he will respond back to me. But until then, it's something that I do keep bringing up to coworkers and my boss. And there's waivers supposedly that support this, and that's where the issue is. And then there's some people that's making minimum wage. So it's a big headache, and it's not a good headache. It's very frustrating, and it's frustrating for the individual when I have to sit down and say, well, I did your time study, and sorry, but you started talking to a friend, so I got to dock your pay for that. What do I do? So I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
And here in a moment, we'll talk about that letter that you wrote to Beshear. But I want to, I have one other thing that as terrible as this is and as outrageous as this is, I found one thing that's even more terrible and even more outrageous, and let's talk about that. And this is something I didn't know until yesterday, but it is actually legal in the United States of America to sterilize disabled. Yeah, you heard that right. I didn't make that up. It is legal in the United States to sterilize the disabled. Straight. So talk about that, because that's just crazy.
It's one of those, it's a kind of a teeter-totter situation, because we'll use Sam as an example. I personally struggle with endometriosis. So if you're caretaking or guardian of a woman who has severe periods, menses, and they have complications, maybe the best thing is to have the sterilization done. But then you have other individuals that have had a baby, they've consented to the sex, but because they are not a typical human, the world feels, well, I need to take your child from you, and then I'm going to force this on you. So it's a fight that I have within myself, because some of these individuals are not given that option. It's just immediately made for them as soon as they have their menses for the very first time. So if you've never heard that terminology before, a menses is a woman's period. And our men, a lot of people don't believe that our men are sexually abused, but it's very, very common within this population. And I don't think, if it's made to benefit the individual medically, absolutely do it. But if it's made because you are afraid as a parent, and parents, please do not hate me for this, because I've had some parents that they all of a sudden don't like me no more once I say this. Understand that your child is going to want to have sex. Understand that your child going through hormones is perfectly normal, and sort of not up to you to take that from them, because we think, oh, a man pleasuring himself is not supposed to happen, or a woman pleasuring themselves. And a little known fact, just to get a little kind of into all of that, most people, I believe, I can't remember the percentage, but it was told to me, little girls at a very young age, as a security, will touch themselves. Men as well. It's kind of like a pacifier. So when a disabled woman is doing this at 14, 15 years old, immediately, oh, we, have to stop this process. They shouldn't be doing this. And my question is, why? When it's normal, it's the human, it's how we react. We all need it, desire it, want it. I don't think that right should be taken immediately when a menses started, or when puberty starts immediately within a man, because you're kind of taking away I don't want to say security, but something from them that shouldn't be taken at a young age, because you're going to cause more problems possibly later down the line. Oh, it's Mama Rosie. Hi.
Hey, Rosie. How are you?
Like, who is that? She said, I'll stand with you. I was trying to figure it out.
We're in front of David McAtee Park right now. Let's continue this discussion about disability rights. We'll share this out. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment section. So let's step away from the real crazy issues here and tone it down a little bit and get into that Andy Beshear letter. Now, it was last year you sent a letter to Andy Beshear?
Sent
5 letters to Andy Beshear. So what did you say to Andy?
Basically, March 20th in Louisville, Kentucky, Andy shut the world down for the community of the disabled. We were all sitting either at work or at home. I was at work we got told, well, guys, sorry, we're gonna have to close. I immediately fell to tears because I thought, how much abuse is going to go undocumented? How much neglect is going to go undocumented? Oh my gosh, I finally just got someone to say a word to me. And now all that's about to be ripped away for we don't know how long. In my letter, I talked about physical therapy, speech, OT being taken away from these individuals. I talked about behavior supports being taken away from these individuals. I talked about the transportation and how they were going to kick that back off when the world opened back up, or if they were going to kick that back off, and if not, was there a backup plan? Because he shut the world down, and then now, as you all see, we're opening back up, and look at what we're going through. Transportation is very chaotic. There's not enough people to run the place. There's not enough training. So did you hire these people in the middle of COVID during shutdown and not offer them proper training? Was it done via Zoom and that's why no one can do their job correctly? You also ran into the issue of the supports, the PT, the OT, the behaviorist. You can't really do OT and stuff over Zoom. It's doable. It was done for it's still being done because people got so used to sitting in front of a computer trying to diagnose someone or trying to help someone, trying to better someone, when in reality it wasn't working. It's not working. It's still not working. I'm here to say it's not working because if I don't care enough about him, but yet I'm sitting with a physical therapist and they're saying, well, Miss Samantha, can you please move his arm left and right and do this? I'm not trained to do that. So how am I doing it correctly? We ran into situations where individuals were being dropped because they weren't trained correctly on how to do a transfer. Running into situations where people were breaking bones or just per neglect happening. And the governor, I appreciate the man, I like the man, but why didn't you knew what you were going to do to Louisville, Kentucky before you've done it? So why did you not think, how should I plan this out? How should I, because Governor Andy, if I'm not mistaken, you made a whole month for direct support professionals, but you let us down tremendously. You let the individuals down that we serve because you didn't have a plan B when it came to how are we going to support them. And that was frustrating. It's frustrating because Andy Beshear, when he was Attorney General, signed in a law for MAD Kentucky, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving. So I felt confident when I sent him that letter, I was going to get a response back from him. Rather if that was by another letter, by an email, or by a phone call by someone in his office. And none of that was done. So it was very frustrating, especially when I'm writing the governor, I'm writing districts, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, so what is the next move? Is anybody even thinking about those that I serve? Because it seems they didn't. It was just a lost subject. And then we came back into work and everybody's just kind of like, well, we've got this new behavior that we've got to learn and deal with, or more diagnoses were coming, but were those diagnoses true diagnoses? And what I mean by that is, are we having a behavior because, by gosh, they're finally excited to be out of a home that they were in for a year? I know I was crazy in a home. I was tired dealing with my crazy 2-year-old boy and my 7-year-old boy at the time. When I finally got to come out into the world, my brain was like, oh, what am I doing? So, of course, we're going to see those behaviors. But had you done your job the last 2 years and kept up with the person that you serve, you would have already known how to support them. Part 3, had you kept up with the individuals that you serve, you would have knew how to react once we opened back up and how these individuals were going to get back out to work, get to their doctor's appointments, and do it safely.
Real quick, I know the odds that Andy Beshear sees this probably pretty low, but just in case, Andy, remember what your job is as governor of the state of Kentucky, and that's to listen to the citizens, and especially those who are knee-deep in the issues that are telling you, you know, what problems we're seeing, what solutions we need. So get on this, reread those letters however many times you got to reread them till you come up with the solutions. Get back with Samantha and do something about this. All right, guy? So let's move on. I'll head this way, I guess.
Yeah, that's
Cut
fine.
through the park there.
It's I'm just going to touch on this real quick. It's so weird seeing fences back down here around Injustice Square. They're not around the square, but it's because of construction. So it's a little like,
Right.
But I guess those who have walked the streets down here would understand that emotion. So sorry, we'll get back to why we're
It brings
on
back
here.
a lot of memories of the last year. Speaking of the last year, obviously it's not just in Kentucky, but around the whole country. We've just seen people in the streets, from Minneapolis to Seattle to New York to here. Some say Louisville is the modern day Selma. We had the Black Lives Movement, especially the Breonna Taylor movement. We've got other movements in this country, such as the LGBTQ movement. And all these movements should be inclusive. Unity is a key to all the movements to making change. And so you see a lot of overlap in these movements of people supporting each other. Not only just their own movement, but other movements. But you never hear about disability rights at these movements. So talk about a little bit, how much are the social justice movements in this country including disability rights? If not, what can they do to be more inclusive, and how can we, make that just as important to everybody marching in the streets around the country as some of these other issues?
I mean, I think a better way, we all use social media, so it's the norm to us. But understanding that not every person has social media, but also understanding that if I am your caretaker and I don't believe what you believe, then I'm not going to take you to a protest. And that I'm just using that as an example. Please don't think that. But so that is something that has crossed my mind, especially during the Breonna Taylor case, because we did see a lot of elders that were out in wheelchairs, and we were cheering them on, like, hey, are you coming along? Let's keep on trucking. And that was something that did warm my heart, because there was unity that way. But I feel there were still those that were still at home that wanted to be in the streets, or at the same time they were afraid because of what local media made it out to be down here. And I think some of the residential homes or the FHP providers, they maybe have felt their hands were kind of like, what do I do? Because it's one of those, well, if I allow them to go express themselves, and if they get hurt, then it's another situation to where, as the caregiver, you be held responsible. So I try to keep an open mind with that situation. I don't feel there's enough disability walks, marches, protests. The rally that just occurred a week and a half ago was probably the first one I've seen personally here in a long time. But I think it's because of the fact that they are afraid, for one, to be in camera, or they're already stared at enough in this world. And unfortunately, I hate to say that, when you walk into a place and you see someone that's wheelchair bound, or you see someone that maybe has the muscle tone, or their face is distorted, or any of that nature, a common human reaction is just to stare and not ask questions, or not try to educate yourself a bit more. And I think that may be another reason why a lot of our disabled community hasn't came out and supported, because of that constant, who's going to stare at me, who's going to judge me, who's going to be disrespectful to me, will I really be invited to that next gathering that's happening, or am I being invited to be exploited? And that's something that happens a lot in this community, to where they just want to be loved, they just want to be recognized, and they could meet you and then all of a sudden build a very, very close relationship. And you've got to be very careful with that, because not everybody has good intentions. So that's where I said I try to keep an open mind, because as a caretaker, that is the last thing I would ever want to happen, is to encourage someone to go out and something terrible happen because they were exploited, or someone took advantage of them, rather if it was rape, abuse, or taking their money. And so I think it's kind of hard in a caregiver position. Where do you support? Because if people are, well, it's my job, if I get out there and do something, I'm here to tell you I lost my job due to what I'm explaining to you all right now. So it's kind of one of those, it's a very hard situation on how do you cross that and how do you encourage that person. Especially, I see some of my friends are actually on here, so they know that I'm crazy right now even saying this, but my whole motto is even one voice can change this world. And the last thing I ever want to do is hold somebody back from lifting their voice. But then I also have to look out for the best interest of my friend and who I serve and lead them in a more safer way for themselves. I hope that kind of answers what you were going towards. If not, I'll try to answer it a bit better. But so yeah, that topic's a little upsetting to me in a way, because I feel like I contradict what I preach with that situation.
And before we wrap it up, I want to take a brief moment to acknowledge somebody, since we're talking about the overlap of movements. There's a face that you'll no longer see in the movement, and we kind of found out about this late, but there's a friend who marched with us many times. I saw him out here many a march, known for his signs, really intricate signs. He was out here the day of the Breonna Taylor announcement, and he marched down Bardstown Road with us. I was at the UBI march that did the live stream at, and he showed up there. But his name was Neil, and you saw him in a power wheelchair with at least 2 signs on him all the time. Very intelligent guy, very nice guy, big heart. So recently, my girlfriend and I, she's especially was close to him, had tried to text him and never got a response. And it turned out that he had been in the hospital and he has passed away.
Oh, no.
So we don't know the exact date of that, but that did happen. And so I did want to take a moment to shout out Neil. We miss you, buddy. Rest in power. We know, hey, you had a lot of hardships in life, but you were out here with us day after day in the struggle and the movement. So thanks very much, buddy. You'll be missed.
I didn't even know that day.
Yeah. I wish I knew the exact day, and I wish we would have probably went to the funeral, but it kind of is what it is and how we found out. But I haven't heard anybody address this. I have not seen his name mentioned anywhere in the papers, any kind of RIPs or anything. So I just want to take the opportunity to mention Neil. So yeah, Melanie says forever loved. So yeah, on that note, before we wrap it up, what can the average person do to help the disabled community? What do people need to know? Is there anything that people can do in their everyday lives to help out? Is it just contacting legislators for different legislation, or is it just something in a daily interaction, or what's your take on that?
Well, a previous coworker actually gave me this idea, and it made a lot of sense to me once he explained it. So, if you take a fingernail and you paint it blue, just one fingernail, paint it blue. Blue stands for autism. It's more, I guess, I'm more knowledge in that field. So when you paint your one fingernail, you go to give money to someone, give someone a handshake, they're going to say, why do you have that fingernail painted? I know I do, because I'm a curious type person. I got to know everything. I'm not the average. You just got to tell me everything. And using some of what I said during this live, or any education that you give yourself to go and watch, go to read, go to Google, just explaining why that fingernail is painted blue, because you're going to catch someone off guard when you say, well, blue stands for autism. Do you know what autism means? Instead of saying, girl, I didn't paint my nails. I didn't have time to do it. That's the usual response you'll get from somebody, a woman especially. So this goes for men too, because people are going to ask, why do you have that fingernail painted? Another thing that I encourage everyone to do is stop staring. Take a moment and understand what's going on. if you see a child, especially a single mother or a mother out by herself, or even a father, and they have a child right then and there having a temper tantrum, you may think, gosh, that kid is bad. That parent needs to whoop their behind. And not understand that you're in the middle of Walmart right now and they're very overstimulated, and that parent is about to have a meltdown themselves because they feel that energy of others staring. Walk up to them and say, hey, can I help you? Or, hey, you know, girl, I've been there. I know what you're going through. You need someone to talk to right now. Let's have a chat. Or even talking to that child, because in a sensory overloaded situation, sometimes it's just as simple as saying, man, I understand how you're feeling. I would be kicking and screaming too if all that loud music was going on and them baskets were rolling across the floor. I know how you feel. Just be more relatable. Be more helpful. You see someone in a wheelchair trying to get into a gas station, don't just sit in your car and watch them struggle. That is something that irks my nerves, because I see it a lot, all the time in the Highlands and in Crescent Hill where I live, is people would just sit and stare like, hello, do you not see that elder right there trying to get in the door? Open it. Where is your manners? So just taking small gestures, coming up with ideals to, you know, bring to legislative or to Governor Andy Beshear and other people, that these nonprofits that are out there, we need your help, we need your support. So when you see us, a lot of us have been impacted by COVID, of course, and we're asking for donations. No donation is too small, because one donation could help someone get something that helps them hold a Crayola crown. And that means so much more to an individual who is struggling to hold a crown and they can't because they don't have the adaptive wear to be able to do so. So spread awareness on your social media. Make your donations if you choose. Say a prayer every day. Help out when you can. And like I said, do that one little step. Painting a fingernail and having someone ask you, why do you have that one fingernail painted? I'm going to challenge everyone to do that. I'm going to come back here tomorrow. I'm going to have these removed and I will paint one fingernail, and we're going to see how many comments we can get on here and kick that off. Maybe that can be something that we can all kick off and bring some awareness within the next month or two, because we're coming up on Halloween, which is a very, very big struggle for our disabled community. It's very triggering for our disabled community. So keep that in the back of your mind, and maybe we can kick something off that will lead into Halloween, which is when Autism Awareness usually starts their little thing that they come out. I think there's 2 nonprofits that do something here in October for it. It costs nothing for you to show kindness. A smile can mean so much. Absolutely.
Great
Because
comment, Tanya.
a lot of people, again, like I said, it goes back to the stares. A lot of the individuals I serve, they read your facial or your body language before they actually hear what you're saying to them. So if I'm standing there, and I'm very bad for this, but I blame previous jobs, I constantly stand with my hands on my hips. And that is very intimidating, especially if you're sitting in a wheelchair, because I'm standing at you with authority. And that is something that I shouldn't do. And it's something that I've been working on for a very long time to not do anymore. So I'm glad you said that, Tanya. Just remember your facials, remember your body stance, and how that can come off to somebody.
Now, I know we've talked about a whole lot of stuff here. Is there anything that we've missed, anything important that people need to know about before we get out of here?
Just remember how lucky you are. Remember that this world is very... I don't want to get myself in trouble, even though I'm not going to get myself in trouble.
We've got you
We're
back.
not as kind as we should be as a society. And in Louisville, Kentucky, in the last year and a half, I have seen how much this community can truly come together when they're passionate about something. And I feel right now with the struggles that the disabled community is having that a lot of people have no idea about, which I'm so thankful that he allowed me to come on and do this live. Think about a lot of things that you have in life that others don't, that are immediately ripped from them the moment that they are diagnosed with something.
right. So let's wrap it up with, how can people follow you online, and if you want to, tout any other sources or anything people should check out online, any other resources, now's a good time to let people know.
Well, I'm Samantha Franklin. A lot of you all have maybe seen me all over local media due to my mother's stuff. My phone number is plastered everywhere. Please don't call me. No, I'm kidding. Call me if you need me for support. But so Samantha Franklin, my actual Facebook page. I do have a business page that is called Fully Rely on God. That relates back to my mother again. My mom loved frogs, and when she was killed, my question to my pastor at her funeral was, did my mother go to heaven, and did she accept Christ as her Savior? I am not a Bible thumper, but it was something that stuck to me. So when I stated earlier in this live, my mom was really my run for what I knew I needed to continue my passion and do, and I wasn't that typical bad child that I thought I was as a kid. So Fully Rely on God, that page is actually going to relaunch and is under construction right now. It's going to relaunch on August 1st. With that page, you're going to see motivational from myself. You're going to see workout from my husband. You're going to dabble in that subject that a lot of people don't talk about, and that is mental health. So we're going to talk about that. We are also going to allow my 7-year-old dabble into mental health and what he has struggled with in the last 5 years. And arts and crafts, all that fun stuff. You'll see me advocating for a few topics, which is DUIs here in the state, ignition interlock here in the state, and then what I do with mental health and the disabled community. It'll all be tied into one on that page. Please bear with me because there's a lot of MLM stuff on there, which is network marketing. I know a lot of people are like, she's going to message me. She's going to code message. I promise that's not what that page is now. But so we're going to relaunch that page. I was going to start my own nonprofit, but have decided that there is plenty here in this world, and we will start supporting them more because I've had a lot ask me if I will step on board with them, and I feel that's the best for myself. We should start early with normalizing mental health for young men. Absolutely, Melanie, and that is one of the biggest reasons why that will be talked about on that page. So it's Fully Rely on God, and the main reason for that, and this is not to bash my husband, but it's just the normal life that he grew up in, as men in general, not just my husband, but my 7-year-old, he went through a lot of trauma when my mother was killed. He was 3 years old. She left our home, his birthday party, and was killed. And at 3, you would think he don't remember, but as time went on, he remembered a lot. And his pediatrician, said you all should do counseling. And my husband was very much like, no, he's okay. He's, 3-4 years old. He doesn't need that. And little did we know that little boy had a lot of stuff that we weren't aware of. I wasn't aware of that. He heard me talking to my attorney. He heard me cry at night when I didn't think that he heard me cry. Or I screwed up a little bit as a parent, and I allowed my child to go to a lot of my public speaking. And with MAD, which is Mothers Against Drunk Driving, there's a program that they offer for those who are convicted in our courts, and they have to complete a training. So they go and they sit and they hear my story. They hear another woman's daughter's story, and you'll see pictures and visuals. I never brought my mom's stuff. I just spoke from the heart and felt that that was enough, that I want my mother's name back in the positive, but she's not a statistic, and I don't want someone to ever see what I've seen throughout court. And I didn't realize that I didn't really protect my son the best way that I should have during that, because I thought I was leading him right by telling him, drinking and driving is bad, or driving under the influence of any drug is bad, and this is what can happen, and not realizing how much mentally that was a lot for him to take on, and it's still a lot to this day for him to try to process and understand. So it is something that Ethan, my 7-year-old, will talk about, and it's not to put him to shame or to put his information out there, but it's to spread awareness, because we've seen a very high spike in suicidal rates in youth. So if my son can use his voice and protect another child, and to let that child know that he is a safe person to talk to when you're walking in school, then absolutely I'm going to cheer him on to do that, because it will also help him getting his emotions out or getting his story out and how he has dealt with it. So thank you, Melanie, for saying that. That was a lot.
Yeah. So I think we're going to wrap it up at this point. Thank you so much for being here today. There's some powerful stuff you're talking about. And for me, this is one of the most emotional, powerful interviews I've done. Maybe the most powerful one I've done to this point. So I appreciate you coming on and talking about it. I know how hard it is. So yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for the work that you do. So you all make sure to follow her page online. Send her a friend request if you're down for this kind of information. I will, as I get more into the disability rights community, I will try to cover as much as I can. So look out for that. I might try to line up another interview here in the next week or two for that. So we'll see if I can make that happen. I am working on some more interviews over the next few weeks. I have several that I want to do. It's just all about scheduling, so we're going to make that happen. Tomorrow's a huge day in the community. We need you. We need you all. Tomorrow's the Medicare for All March. It's 11 o'clock at 7th and Chestnut. Meet there. We need to flood the streets. I know Medicare for All is big for everybody. I know it would be a big deal for the disabled. We need to make this happen. We need to put pressure on our legislators. Let's get out there. For those of you who can't make it, I will be live streaming, so share that out if you can't be there. So yeah, just look out for all of that. Hopefully I'll see you all tomorrow. Thanks so much, everyone. And remember, always think critically.